So picture this. You are sitting in this incredibly sterile, fluorescent lit terminal of an airport, just staring blankly at the departure board.
Oh, the absolute worst feeling.
Right. And the little red letters next to your flight, they just flip from delayed to canceled. And this is the last flight out.
You're stuck.
You are totally stuck. You are missing your best friend's wedding. Your rental car is already returned. The hotels are completely booked solid because, I don't know, there's a huge convention in town.
Yeah, naturally.
Naturally. And your phone battery is resting at a perilous 4%.
Panic mode.
Exactly. Your heart rate spikes, your stomach just drops, and the thought that immediately loops in your head is, why does this always happen to me?
Like the universe is actively out to get you.
Yes, you feel like there is a vendetta. But then, right, rewind to a completely different day. You're at a crowded cafe, and you accidentally spill coffee on a stranger.
A nightmare, usually.
Usually, yeah.
Oh.
But you offer to buy them a replacement, you apologize, and during the 5 minutes it takes for the barista to make the new latte, you strike up a conversation.
Right.
And it turns out this stranger is the lead investor at a venture capital firm that specializes in the exact niche software that your struggling startup just built.
Unbelievable.
2 months later, you close a seed round that completely changes your life. And in that moment, you look up at the sky and think, I am literally the luckiest person alive.
We constantly experience these massive swings, these events that feel so statistically improbable that the human brain just struggles to process them as mere coincidence.
It feels too big to be random.
Exactly. When the outcome is disastrous, we feel cursed, like we're targeted by this malicious cosmic algorithm.
Right.
But when the outcome is life-altering in a positive way, we feel anointed.
Like destiny finally handed us the golden ticket.
Right. We perceive these moments not just as random events, but as definitive proof of some invisible external force that is just governing our lives.
And we just surrender to it. We throw our hands up in the face of the chaos and declare, well, that's just my luck.
Yeah, it becomes a crutch.
It really does. We use it as this blanket explanation for literally everything that falls outside our daily routine. And honestly, that is exactly what we are dismantling today.
We're getting into the mechanics of it.
Exactly. And look, if you are listening right now, you are the third person in the room with us for this deep dive.
Yeah.
And we are custom tailoring this exploration specifically for you.
Especially if you have ever felt like you were just a passenger, in a vehicle driven entirely by random chance.
Right. We are going to take the abstract, mystical concept of luck and just run it through a very rigorous filter to understand what is actually happening behind the scenes.
And the lens we are using to examine this is a fantastic book called Good Luck, Bad Luck by Vikpresh Duvedi and Jen Nami.
Such a great read.
It really is. Because the value of this text is that it entirely discards the magical thinking that we usually associate with fortune.
Yeah, so spoiler alert, there is no discussion of manifesting wealth by, staring at a vision board.
No vision boards.
Yeah.
And no hoping the universe aligns your chakras either. Instead, the authors take an analytical, almost clinical approach to chance, probability, behavioral psychology, and human resilience.
They are interested in the actual mechanics, right? How events unfold, and more importantly, how our own cognitive processing dictates our reality.
Right, because to tame a beast, you first have to define its anatomy. And Duvedi and Nami basically pull luck down out of the clouds, put it under a microscope, and categorize it.
Which is so helpful, because if everything is just luck, the word completely loses all meaning.
It really does. So they break it down into 4 distinct categories, and they start with the one that feels the most visceral, which is random chance.
Okay, random chance. Define that for us.
So random chance is the purely unpredictable variable in the equation of life. It is the bedrock of what we traditionally label as luck, and it is entirely devoid of human intention.
So no one is driving the bus.
Nobody. It is the tree branch snapping during a sudden windstorm and landing perfectly on your car's windshield. It is your name being pulled out of a hat containing 10,000 other names.
Just pure math.
Exactly. The authors are very clear that random chance is mathematically real. There is no discernible pattern, no hidden meaning, and absolutely no deliberate control on your part. It is just the background noise of a chaotic universe.
It is the cosmic lottery, the pure roll of the dice. But, I mean, the problem is we so often conflate pure random chance with their second category, which has a very different mechanical structure.
Yes, serendipity.
Right, serendipity. We treat serendipity like it's just random chance, but the book argues that serendipity actually requires a specific human catalyst.
It does. Serendipity is defined by the authors as an accidental discovery that yields a significant benefit, but the mechanism behind it is entirely reliant on the psychological state of the individual.
The mindset.
Specifically, an elevated state of open-mindedness and curiosity. From a cognitive perspective, this involves the brain's reticular activating system, or the RAS.
Okay, wait, the RAS. Let's break that down for someone new to this.
Sure. The RAS is this network of neurons located in the brainstem, and it basically acts as a filter for all the sensory data bombarding you every single second.
Because we'd go crazy if we processed everything.
Exactly. It decides what information gets ignored and what gets pushed to your conscious awareness.
So, okay, if you are walking down a busy street, completely absorbed in your own anxiety, just like staring at your phone.
Your RAS filters out almost everything around you.
Right. So you could literally walk past a storefront displaying the exact vintage guitar you've been searching for years, and you wouldn't even register it.
It wouldn't even blip on your radar.
Mhm.
But if you cultivate a psychological baseline of curiosity, you are effectively programming your RAS to flag novel, unexpected inputs.
So you train the filter.
Yes. So serendipity occurs when, say, you are researching the migratory patterns of birds for a college paper, and you stumble across an unrelated footnote about aerodynamics. And that random footnote sparks an idea for a more efficient drone propeller design. The encounter with the footnote was accidental, right? That is the random chance element.
But the serendipitous outcome only materialized because your cognitive filter was wide open.
Exactly. Your curiosity connected the disparate data points. So serendipity requires an active participant.
I love that. And that distinction actually makes the third category even more compelling. The authors call it preparedness meeting opportunity.
Which sounds like an old cliche.
Yeah, I think it's usually attributed to Seneca, right? But Dwight and Nami actually dissect the mathematics behind it.
They do. The argument is that acquiring knowledge or honing a specific talent or just doing deep, unglamorous hard work structurally alters the probability that you will be able to extract value from a random event.
Because opportunity is often totally invisible to the unprepared eye.
Precisely. Let us say you are at a generic networking event, and you end up in a brief conversation with a software executive. The executive casually mentions a highly technical, obscure problem their back-end engineering team has been struggling to solve for 6 months.
If you are a novice, that comment just sounds like boring jargon.
Right. And the conversation just moves on to the weather, the opportunity passes, completely unrecognized.
You don't even know you missed a lucky break. It just sounds like a guy complaining about his day.
But if you have spent the last 4 years obsessively studying that specific coding architecture in your basement every single night, that casual complaint instantly registers as a massive opportunity.
A huge one. You can speak to the problem, offer a theoretical solution right on the spot, and secure a meeting.
The opportunity, which is the random interaction with the executive, was the chance event. The preparation is what allowed you to perceive the opportunity and physically reach out and grab it.
You know, I always think about it like a thunderstorm.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, so the lightning itself represents pure, uncontrollable, random chance. You cannot dictate when the storm rolls in, and you certainly cannot predict the exact square inch of ground where the lightning will strike.
No, not at all.
But if you spend years slowly building and erecting a massive, highly conductive copper lightning rod.
Which represents your skills.
Right. Your skills, your network, your education, even your emotional regulation, you are exponentially increasing the surface area capable of catching that energy.
So true.
Someone standing in an open field with absolutely nothing in their hands might get struck, sure, but the odds are astronomical. You, with your giant lightning rod, are mathematically engineering a scenario where you are far more likely to capture that random energy.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the underlying mechanics.
Yeah.
You are manipulating the variables within your control to increase the statistical likelihood of capturing a positive random variance.
Wait, okay, I want to pause here, because if the premise is that luck is actually preparation meeting opportunity, aren't we just creating a very sophisticated framework for victim blaming?
Ah, I see where you're going.
I mean, if someone loses their job because a private equity firm buys their company and liquidates the staff, and then 2 weeks later they get diagnosed with a severe illness, Is this book suggesting they just weren't holding their lightning rod high enough?
That would be awful.
Right. Telling someone who is drowning in misfortune that they just lacked preparation seems incredibly callous.
Well, the authors anticipate that exact critique, and it is a vital distinction to make. The goal of this categorization is absolutely not to induce self-blame or to suggest that all misfortune is the result of personal failure.
Because some things are just out of our hands.
Random chance, that first category we discussed, is fiercely real and entirely indifferent to human suffering. The private equity buyout and the illness are prime examples of negative random chance. No amount of preparation stops a hurricane from destroying a coastline.
Okay, so the categorization isn't about assigning blame for the event itself. No, it is about cognitive sorting. When a catastrophic event occurs, the human brain tends to panic and lump everything into one massive, overwhelming bucket labeled, "My life is ruined."
Yeah, we catastrophize.
By categorizing the forms of luck, you are practicing a form of psychological triage. You isolate the uncontrollable random event, like the illness or the layoff, and separate it from your controllable response.
That makes a lot of sense.
You acknowledge that the initial blow was pure chance, which completely removes the burden of guilt.
Yeah.
But you also recognize that your preparation, like your emergency savings fund or your health insurance or your professional network, will dictate how you navigate the aftermath.
So you didn't cause the storm, but you are responsible for checking if you have an umbrella.
Precisely.
And that actually transitions us perfectly into the fourth category of luck, which honestly, this blew my mind because it is completely invisible in our daily lives. Dwivedi and Nami introduced the concept of neutral luck.
Neutral luck is the vast, unexplored territory where the overwhelming majority of human existence actually takes place.
It's just the everyday stuff.
These are the situations where chance plays a negligible role and the outcome is completely unremarkable.
It is the dial turned perfectly to 5 out of 10.
Consider your morning commute, for example.
Yep.
Getting into a multi-car pileup is extreme bad random chance. Finding a $100 bill on the train seat is extreme good random chance.
Right.
Neutral luck is simply driving to work, encountering moderate traffic that completely aligns with historical data, and arriving exactly on time.
It's experiencing weather that is neither a tornado nor an immaculate cloudless spring day, but just like overcast and fine.
Or ordering a sandwich at a deli, receiving a sandwich that tastes exactly as you expected, and paying the market price for it.
Okay, but I have to ask, why does a book about luck dedicate an entire section to the most boring, mundane moments of our lives? Like, what is the value of analyzing an average sandwich?
The value is entirely in combating recency bias and emotional dysregulation.
Wow.
The human brain is neurologically wired to prioritize extreme anomalies.
We only remember the weird stuff.
Exactly. We remember the disastrous flat tire and we remember the lottery win because those events trigger massive spikes in cortisol or dopamine.
So they get burned into our memory.
Right. And because we only remember the extremes, we develop a deeply skewed perception of reality, believing that life is just a chaotic ping-pong match between miracles and disasters.
We think the universe is constantly screaming at us when most of the time it's actually just humming quietly in the background.
Recognizing neutral luck forces us to acknowledge that baseline of stability. It is the canvas upon which human agency actually matters. If you only focus on the extremes, you feel totally helpless.
Yeah, you feel like a victim.
But when you realize that 90% of your week is governed by neutral luck, you understand that your daily habits, your work ethic, and your relationships are the primary drivers of your life's trajectory. Neutral luck is the environment where your preparation yields the most consistent compounding returns.
So we have the cosmic lottery of random chance, the open-mindedness of serendipity, the lightning rod of preparedness, and the boring, beautiful canvas of neutral luck.
That sums it up.
But, I mean, humans detest chaos, even when we categorize it. The fact that random chance exists at all is just terrifying. We want to predict the storm. We want to measure the invisible.
Degree of control.
Which brings us to the tools we have invented to try and tame the beast, right? Mathematics. The book spends significant time separating the concept of chance from the concept of probability.
And that distinction is absolutely crucial for how we manage risk.
So break that down for us.
Well, it is the difference between the reality of an event and our human framework for understanding it. Chance is the singular, unpredictable occurrence.
Yeah.
It is the physical coin slipping through the air and landing on heads. You cannot know the outcome until it happens. Probability, however, is the mathematical construct we use to measure the likelihood of that occurrence over an infinite number of trials. Probability does not, and cannot predict the outcome of a single isolated event. It merely maps the distribution of possible outcomes.
So if chance is the unpredictable weather system moving across the ocean, probability is the meteorologist building a computer model to tell us there is a 60% likelihood of rain on Tuesday.
Perfect analogy.
The meteorologist doesn't control the rain, they just map the data.
Exactly. And the utility of probability, as Gravy and Nami outline, is that it functions as an emotional buffer and a strategic tool. When you understand probability, you drastically reduce your reliance on arbitrary luck.
How so? Give us an example.
Let us say you are launching a new restaurant. If you understand the statistical probability that 60% of new restaurants fail within the first year, you don't just open the doors, cross your fingers, and hope for a lucky break.
Right, you'd be crazy to do that. You secure a line of credit, you aggressively research foot traffic, you negotiate a flexible lease.
You build contingency plans based entirely on the math. Furthermore, probability removes the emotional devastation of failure.
Oh, that's interesting.
If your restaurant does fail despite your absolute best efforts, you are less likely to view it as a cosmic curse or a personal indictment of your worth. You understand that you simply fell on the wrong side of the statistical distribution this time. You played a hand where the odds were inherently difficult.
But let's talk about the opposite scenario, though. What happens when you fall on the right side of the statistical distribution over and over again?
The lucky streak.
Yes. The book delves into the psychology of the lucky streak, and this is where the human brain really starts to malfunction, doesn't it?
It really does.
Because we've all been there. You hit every single green light on the way to work, you completely nail a presentation, your boss gives you a bonus, you go out for lunch, and your favorite cafe gives you a free pastry just because.
The psychological phenomenon of the lucky streak is fascinating because it actually alters your behavior in real time. When you experience a cluster of positive random variants like a few good things happening in quick succession, your brain is absolutely flooded with dopamine.
The feel-good chemical.
Yes. And this neurochemical reward creates profound confidence. It removes the friction of self-doubt. You walk taller, you speak with more authority, and you process information faster because you aren't bogged down by anxiety.
And the momentum becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because you feel confident, you take a bolder risk in a meeting, which pays off, which just creates more confidence.
Exactly. The streak artificially enhances your performance.
It does. But Duvaivi and Nami dedicate a substantial portion of the text to the extreme danger lurking inside a lucky streak.
They do, because it's a trap.
The dopamine rush is so intoxicating that it leads directly to cognitive distortion, specifically complacency and hubris.
The crash. The moment Icarus flies too close to the sun.
Yes. When you experience repeated success, the brain's pattern recognition software basically misfires. It begins to attribute the purely random positive variance entirely to your own innate genius.
You stop acknowledging the role of chance or favorable external conditions.
And the most dangerous symptom of this hubris is the assumption that past data mathematically guarantees future results.
It is the exact mindset of a card counter at a casino who completely loses their discipline.
Oh, I love this analogy. Explain this one.
Okay, so if you know how to count cards in blackjack, you are essentially calculating the shifting probability of the deck. If the count is high, you know there is a mathematically higher probability that the dealer will bust, or you will hit a 21.
So you have the edge.
You have the edge. But the actual physical card pulled out of the shoe is still pure, unpredictable chance. If a card counter wins 5 massive hands in a row, the dopamine floods their system. They start thinking they aren't just playing the math, they're literally controlling the cards.
Right. They feel invincible.
They push all their chips into the middle in the 6th hand, completely ignoring their carefully calibrated betting strategy because they feel hot.
And then a 2 clubs comes out and they lose the house.
That is the essence of the gambler's fallacy running in reverse. You believe the streak alters the fundamental mechanics of the universe.
Which is terrifying. So how do we stop ourselves from doing that?
To prevent this, the authors prescribed a specific psychological antidote: radical humility.
Radical humility.
And humility in this context is not about self-deprecation or pretending you aren't skilled. It is the conscious, continuous recognition that human agency and preparation can only mitigate the probabilities of a bad outcome. They can never eliminate chance entirely.
You have to constantly remind yourself that knowing the weather forecast doesn't give you the power to stop the rain.
Humility requires understanding that historical data never perfectly mirrors future events. There's always an unforeseen variable, like a microscopic shift in the market, a sudden change in consumer behavior, a global event. The way you survive a lucky streak without destroying yourself is by anchoring your decisions to your foundational logic, not your elevated emotional state. You acknowledge that the favorable wind at your back is temporary, and you continue to check the rigging of your sails.
But man, knowing the math is just incredibly exhausting. If probability cannot guarantee our safety, and chance is constantly lurking in the background, waiting to drop a tree branch on our car, it is no wonder human beings have spent millennia trying to invent shortcuts.
We want an easier way out.
Exactly. If we can't control the math, we try to control the magic. Which brings us to the psychology of why me? This huge deep dive into superstitions, ancient myths, and the cognitive biases that govern our daily lives.
To really understand superstitions, we must first look at the evolutionary neurology of the human brain. We are, at our core, pattern recognition machines,
Built to survive.
built to survive. In the ancestral environment, recognizing patterns was literally a matter of life and death. If you heard a rustle in the tall grass, your brain had to instantly correlate that sound with the potential presence of a predator.
Right. A tiger.
The brain that assumed the rustle was a tiger, ran away, and survived, passed on its genes. The brain that stopped to analytically calculate the probability of just being the wind, well,
Got eaten.
got eaten.
So we are essentially the evolutionary descendants of the paranoid. We are hardwired for false positives.
Yes, we inherently despise uncertainty because uncertainty equals danger. When probability fails to give us a definitive, guaranteed answer about the future, the brain experiences a massive surge of cortisol, which is stress and anxiety.
Oh, we hate that feeling.
We hate it. So to alleviate that stress, the brain invents its own answers. It creates an artificial pattern to enforce an illusion of control over a chaotic environment. That is the fundamental psychological purpose of a superstition. It's a self-soothing mechanism.
The book explores the historical origins of these soothing mechanisms, and it is honestly fascinating to see how deeply embedded they are in our cultural DNA.
They're everywhere.
Like, we casually throw salt over our shoulders or avoid walking under ladders without ever questioning the source code of the behavior. Take the classic superstition. Breaking a mirror guarantees 7 years of bad luck. This isn't just about the cost of shattered glass.
No, not at all. The authors trace this back to antiquity, specifically ancient Roman beliefs.
The Romans, right?
Yeah, mirrors in that era were rare, expensive, and deeply mystical. The Romans believed that a mirror did not merely reflect a person's physical image, but actually captured and reflected a fragment of their soul.
Wow.
Therefore, shattering the mirror was not just property damage, it was the literal fracturing of the human spirit. And the specific duration of 7 years stems from the Roman belief that the human body and soul required exactly 7 years to physically regenerate and purify itself.
That is wild. And the fear of walking under a ladder has equally profound roots. Like, it seems like practical safety advice, right? Don't walk where a hammer might fall on your head.
Right, that's what we tell ourselves.
But the psychological terror actually comes from ancient Egyptian and early Christian symbolism. A ladder leaning against a wall forms a triangle. And in many ancient cultures, the triangle was a sacred geometric shape, representing the ascent to the heavens or the Holy Trinity.
Yes.
To walk through that triangle was to violate a sacred boundary, showing profound disrespect to the deities or spirits residing in that liminal space. You were essentially daring the cosmos to strike you down for your arrogance.
Even our modern apprehension about Friday the 13th is a direct descendant of ancient storytelling. While pop culture has definitely amplified it, the origin explored in the text actually involves Norse mythology.
Okay, tell me about this one.
So the myth details a legendary banquet in Valhalla, attended by 12 gods. Loki, the chaotic trickster god, crashed the gathering and invited, bringing the total number of guests to 13.
Of course it was Loki.
Always Loki. His malicious interference at that specific banquet led directly to the death of Balder, the god of light and joy. Thus, the number 13 became permanently associated with the introduction of chaos and the harbinger of death.
Or what about opening an umbrella indoors? It seems completely absurd now, but ancient Egyptian and Roman parasols were designed specifically to protect nobility from the harsh rays of the sun, and the sun was worshipped as a supreme deity.
The sun god.
Right. Opening that protective shield indoors, away from the sun's gaze, was viewed as a direct insult to the sun god, an act of defiance that literally invited their wrath right into your home.
These historical anecdotes are so vital because they illustrate how arbitrary cultural fears crystallize into generational habits. But Dwivey and Nami are quick to point out that we shouldn't just laugh at the ancient Romans,
Because we do the exact same thing today.
because our modern brains are executing the exact same flawed pattern recognition software today, just under the guise of cognitive biases.
Right, so we don't worry about the sun god, but we definitely worry about our lucky socks.
Precisely. The book details several of these specific brain glitches, starting with illusory correlation.
Oh, this one is so common.
It occurs when the brain observes two entirely distinct, statistically unconnected events occurring in close proximity and permanently wires them together in a causal relationship.
Yeah, so like you wear a specific vintage, totally unwashed band t-shirt, and your favorite hockey team wins Game 7 of the playoffs in double overtime.
Classic.
Your brain completely ignores the thousands of hours of practice the athletes put in, the strategy of the coaches, and the physics of the ice. Instead, your brain draws a thick, permanent line connecting the fibers of your unwashed shirt to the winning goal scored 1,000 miles away.
Once that illusory correlation is established, it feeds directly into the second glitch, which is confirmation bias.
Which we hear about all the time, but how does it apply here?
Confirmation bias is the brain's tendency to selectively filter reality to protect its established beliefs. Once you believe the t-shirt possesses the power to influence the hockey game, your memory becomes deeply selective.
Right.
You will vividly remember the 3 times you wore the shirt and the team won. You will effortlessly, almost subconsciously, forget or explain away the 4 times you wore the shirt and they lost heavily. The brain protects the superstition because the superstition protects the illusion of control.
But that cognitive bias that really derails us, I mean, the one that stops us from actually learning how to navigate the world, is what the authors call the attribution error.
The fundamental attribution error, in the context of luck, is essentially a defense mechanism for the ego. It is the asymmetry in how we assign responsibility for outcomes.
Okay, unpack that.
When we experience good luck, a promotion, a successful investment, a creative breakthrough, we attribute the success entirely to internal, intrinsic factors. We tell ourselves we succeeded because we are exceptionally brilliant, hardworking, and uniquely talented.
We claim the victory, we say, I earned this. But when we experience a failure,
When we experience a setback, the attribution error completely flips the script. We immediately attribute the failure to external, uncontrollable factors.
it's never a fault.
Right. We didn't get the promotion because the boss was playing favorites. The investment failed because the market is rigged. The creative project was rejected because the audience lacks sophisticated taste. We just blame bad luck.
We outsource the failure to protect our self-esteem, but in doing so, we rob ourselves of the data we need to actually improve. If every failure is just bad luck, there is nothing to fix.
Exactly. But let us pause here and consider the nuance, because not all irrational behavior is inherently destructive.
Wait, really? Because I was thinking about the placebo effect. I can imagine a listener who is an elite college athlete thinking, look, I know my pregame ritual of tapping the door frame 3 times doesn't magically alter the physics of the basketball court. But if doing it lowers my heart rate, focuses my breathing, and gives me the confidence to shoot a higher percentage, isn't that superstition actually serving a highly effective, practical function?
Yeah, it's a very fair point.
Why should we tear down a psychological crutch if it actually helps someone walk?
The authors address this directly, and they do not universally condemn the use of rituals. The psychological comfort derived from a routine is a measurable physiological phenomenon.
Okay, so it does work.
If bouncing a tennis ball exactly 4 times before a serve downregulates your sympathetic nervous system and prevents you from rushing the motion, the ritual is functionally useful.
So where is the line drawn? Because there has to be a line.
The danger, the critical threshold where superstition becomes toxic, is when the irrational belief overrides your ability to make logical, high-probability decisions.
Give me an example of that.
The line is drawn when the superstition dictates a significant life choice contrary to your best interests. Imagine a scenario where you are offered a highly lucrative, career-defining job in a new city. It is a massive step forward, but the official offer letter is dated Friday the 13th, and the office building is located on the 13th floor.
Oh, wow.
If your reliance on the superstition causes such severe anxiety that you decline the offer, the cognitive bias has officially crossed from a harmless pregame ritual into active self-sabotage. You are literally allowing ancient Norse mythology to dictate your economic future.
That is so true. So how do you break that neural pathway? If someone realizes their superstitions are actually restricting their life, how do they uninstall the software?
Dwivey and Nami Introduce clinical psychological frameworks, specifically cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and exposure therapy.
Okay, CBT.
The fundamental premise of CBT is that our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are interconnected, and that by consciously challenging irrational thoughts, we can alter our emotional response. Exposure therapy is a specific technique within that framework.
How does that actually work mechanically in the brain, though?
It works through a process called habituation and neural rewiring. When you encounter the trigger of your superstition, let's say walking toward a ladder on the sidewalk, your amygdala, which is the brain's fear center, fires off a warning signal. Your instinct is to cross the street to avoid it.
Flight response.
Right. In exposure therapy, you intentionally choose to walk under the ladder in a controlled, safe environment. You deliberately trigger the anxiety. As you walk under it, your cortisol levels spike.
Which is terrifying in the moment.
But then, crucial seconds pass, and the sky does not fall. No anvil drops on your head. You survive. By repeatedly exposing yourself to the feared stimulus without the negative consequence occurring, you create new neural pathways.
Oh, I see.
The prefrontal cortex, the logical reasoning part of the brain, learns to suppress the amygdala's panic response. You are physically retraining the brain to decouple the trigger from the fear.
It is about proving to your own nervous system that the monster under the bed is really just a shadow.
Exactly.
And this is the perfect pivot point in the book's philosophy. Because once you use these techniques to dismantle the false sense of control, the magical thinking, the superstitions, the blaming of the universe, you are left standing in the reality of the situation.
Just you and the facts.
And reality dictates that sometimes genuine, objective bad luck is going to hit you. The question then becomes one of emotional alchemy. How do you take a genuinely terrible random event and synthesize a positive outcome from it?
This is where the authors transition from theoretical psychology to practical resilience. And the foundational step of this emotional alchemy is understanding the profound difference between acceptance and self-compassion.
Okay, because those terms are often used interchangeably in self-help literature, right?
They are, but structurally, they serve very different functions.
Let's break that down. Say you spend 3 months preparing a massive pitch for a client. You fly across the country, and the moment you plug your laptop into the projector, the motherboard fries.
Oh, brutal.
You have no slides, no data, and you lose the account. It is a devastating stroke of pure bad luck.
Acceptance is the cognitive recognition of the external reality. It is looking at the black screen and stating the objective facts. The laptop is broken. The presentation is ruined. We will likely lose this client.
So it's just dealing with what is.
Right. It is refusing to live in denial or magically hope the computer fixes itself. Acceptance stops you from fighting a reality that has already occurred. But acceptance alone can be brutal. It can quickly spiral into nihilism.
Like, the laptop is broken, therefore nothing matters, my career is over.
Exactly. This is where self-compassion must intervene. Self-compassion governs your internal narrative regarding the external event. It is the conscious decision to accept the bad luck without internalizing it as a permanent flaw in your character.
Okay, that's key.
It is stopping the voice in your head that says the laptop broke because I am fundamentally flawed, I am a failure, I am cursed, and I never should have tried to land this account in the first place.
Because that voice can be so loud.
It can. Self-compassion allows you to grieve the lost opportunity while maintaining your baseline sense of self-worth. It is the firewall that prevents a bad event from becoming a bad identity.
You stop the infection from spreading from the laptop to your soul. I love that. And once that firewall is up, the authors introduce the engine of the alchemy, the growth mindset and the concept of reframing. This is where you actually take the bad data and use it.
Drawing heavily on established psychological frameworks, the growth mindset dictates that intelligence, capability, and even luck are not fixed traits, but malleable variables that can be developed through effort and analysis.
Because you can always improve.
Reframing is the tactical application of this mindset.
Yep.
It's taking the setback and viewing it not as a permanent dead end, but as a forced pivot. It is asking the question, what specific vulnerabilities did this stroke of bad luck expose in my system?
Bad luck is the ultimate stress test.
Precisely. When things are going well, when you are riding a lucky streak, the positive outcomes mask your systemic flaws. You don't realize your processes are inefficient because the money is still coming in.
Success hides the cracks.
Yes. A failure or a stroke of bad luck violently highlights those inefficiencies. It provides you with the raw, unvarnished data required to take smarter, more calculated risks in the future. The fried laptop is terrible luck, but it exposes the fact that you didn't have your presentation backed up on a cloud server or a secondary flash drive.
Right.
The failure forces you to build a more robust, bulletproof system for the next pitch.
Let's ground this concept in a highly visceral scenario for anyone listening who feels completely overwhelmed right now. Imagine you are driving to a final round job interview. This is the job that will pull you out of debt. You've prepared for weeks. You're wearing your best suit.
The stakes are high.
Very high. You are 10 minutes away, driving on the highway, and you hit a massive piece of debris. Your tire blows out. You wrestle the car to the shoulder. It is pure, unadulterated, bad, random chance. Your heart is pounding in your throat.
In that moment, the default physiological response is just pure panic. The amygdala completely hijacks the brain. You grip the steering wheel, you scream, and the narrative instantly shifts to, I am cursed. I am never getting out of debt. The universe hates me.
The cortisol just prevents you from thinking clearly.
But instead of succumbing to the hijack, you practice the alchemy. You force the reframing. You take 3 deep, slow breaths to manually lower your heart rate and re-engage your prefrontal cortex.
So you accept the reality. The tire is flat. You will not be there in person.
And you apply self-compassion. You acknowledge that hitting debris is not a moral failing on your part.
Right. And then you weaponize the bad luck.
How so?
You pull out your phone. You call the hiring manager directly. You explain the situation with complete calm and professionalism. You don't whine. You don't play the victim. You just state the facts. And then you immediately offer a solution. You ask if they can switch to a video call for the next 30 minutes while you wait for the tow truck.
That is brilliant. The brilliance of this response is that you have taken a moment of catastrophic luck and transformed it into a live demonstration of your supreme competence.
Exactly.
Every candidate will claim they handle stress well on their resume. You are actively proving it. You are showing the potential employer your emotional regulation, your crisis management skills, and your ability to pivot under extreme pressure. You've taken the raw material of bad luck and forged it into a massive competitive advantage. That is the absolute zenith of resilience.
But I mean, the reality is nobody suddenly becomes a Zen master on the side of a noisy highway while their life is falling apart unless they have practiced.
Very true.
How does a listener actually build this resilience architecture? What is the daily workout for this specific psychological muscle?
Resilience is a highly trainable skill, heavily reliant on emotional intelligence. The core daily practice is learning to widen the gap between a stimulus and your response.
Give me an example.
When a minor inconvenience occurs, you spill coffee, you get a frustrating email, you practice pausing for 2 seconds before reacting. You train the brain to observe the emotion rather than instantly acting upon it. Furthermore, the book emphasizes building a robust social support network.
Because resilience isn't just about being a lone wolf.
Right. Resilience is rarely a solitary endeavor. Having trusted colleagues or friends allows you to offload the cognitive burden of stress. You also practice mindfulness, which trains the brain to stay anchored in the present moment rather than catastrophizing about future consequences.
Right.
But the most critical daily workout is an obsessive, relentless focus on the controllable variables. You cannot fix the flat tire with your mind, and you cannot control the hiring manager's reaction to your phone call. But you have absolute, uncompromising control over the tone of your voice, the clarity of your explanation, and the next physical action you take.
By focusing purely on the execution of the next controllable step, you starve the panic of oxygen. Focus relentlessly on the controllable. It sounds simple, but it requires massive discipline. Now, if our internal mindset dictates how we process the luck that impacts us, the natural next question is, how do our external actions influence the environment around us?
The external ripple effect.
Right. Does putting good out into the world actually increase the probability of good luck returning? This leads into a section of the book that navigates incredibly tricky waters, their exploration of karma and cosmic justice.
It is a delicate subject because the concept of karma carries thousands of years of profound cultural, spiritual, and religious weight. Different traditions interpret it in vastly different ways.
Of course.
But Dwaivi and Nami approach karma by stripping away the metaphysical interpretations of reincarnation or divine retribution, and instead focus on karma as a highly practical, observable sociological law of cause and effect. They frame it through the lens of network theory.
So they are looking at the math of human interaction. They propose that karma is essentially the creation of a virtuous cycle within a social ecosystem. If you operate with consistent kindness, generosity, and professional integrity, You are not earning magical points with the universe.
No, you are literally building a highly conductive social network.
Exactly.
Consider how information and opportunity travel through human networks. If you are consistently helpful to your junior colleagues, if you share credit for successes, and if you operate transparently, you create an energetic footprint of goodwill.
People like you.
People inherently want to collaborate with, hire, and assist individuals who have demonstrated pro-social behavior. When a serendipitous opportunity arises, say, a colleague hears about a massive, unadvertised project, they are statistically far more likely to route that opportunity to the person who helped them when they were struggling.
You are literally seeding the ground for good luck to grow. And in this practical framing, cosmic justice isn't a thunderbolt from the sky punishing the wicked. It is the natural consequence of your ethical footprint. A person who constantly lies, cheats, and manipulates their network might achieve short-term success, but they are systematically destroying the bridges that bring future opportunities to them. When they inevitably face a stroke of bad, random chance, their network will simply watch them fall.
That is the mechanical reality of karma in a social context. You create an environment where good luck is welcomed and bad luck is buffered by the community you've cultivated.
Wait, okay, I need to throw a massive red flag on this concept because this is where the philosophy of karma can become incredibly toxic.
I agree, it can.
If we state that your actions dictate your outcomes, doesn't that inevitably lead directly to victim blaming? What happens when we look at someone who experiences a horrific tragedy, a child diagnosed with leukemia, a family wiped out by a tsunami, a community destroyed by war? Are we supposed to look at them and say, well, the math of cause and effect says you must have put some terrible energy into the universe to attract this?
That would be horrific.
Because if that is the implication, it is a deeply cruel and horrific way to view human suffering.
I completely agree with your alarm, and it is the exact reason why Dwevi and Nami dedicate a very specific, carefully worded section to the limitations of karma. They explicitly warn against weaponizing the concept of cause and effect to judge others. The fundamental flaw in using karma to explain every tragedy is that it completely ignores the overwhelming reality of systemic macroscopic factors.
The environment overrides the individual?
Exactly. Individual karma, or your personal ethical footprint, operates within the microscopic layer of your immediate network. But human beings exist within massive, complex systems. If a predatory hedge fund buys a manufacturing plant and lays off 2,000 workers to inflate their quarterly stock price, those workers did not lose their livelihoods because of a personal moral failure.
No, of course not.
They were crushed by a macroscopic economic system designed to prioritize capital over labor. If an earthquake levels a city, it is a geological reality, not a cosmic judgment on the morality of the citizens. The authors refer to these massive forces as collective karma, or simply the chaotic limitations of the universe. It is mathematically impossible and ethically abhorrent to attempt to tie a random systemic disaster to an individual's personal behavior.
So if karma is so easily overridden by a recession or a hurricane, what is the point of practicing it at all?
The point, and the text's vital conclusion on this matter, is that the concept of karma must only be used internally. It is a tool for rigorous self-reflection and personal ethical responsibility. Use it to govern your own actions to ensure you are contributing positively to the ecosystem.
So you just focus on your side of the street?
It is never, under any circumstances, meant to be used externally as a yardstick to judge the misfortunes of others. You focus obsessively on putting good into the world, building your virtuous cycle, but you maintain the empathy to recognize that devastating things happen to wonderful people purely because the universe is chaotic and indifferent.
That distinction changes everything. It keeps the power of ethical action in your hands, but it completely removes the terrifying guilt of assuming you caused your own random tragedy.
Exactly.
And that clarity brings us to the ultimate culmination of this entire deep dive. If we accept the reality of our existence, that our lives are a chaotic cocktail of pure random chance, statistical probability, cognitive biases, and the resilience of our mindset, what is the end game? Why are we analyzing this so deeply?
Right. What is the point of all this analysis?
The authors argue that the ultimate goal of understanding luck is to achieve a state of happiness and success that is completely independent of whether the dice roll your way or not.
To achieve that independence, we must first dismantle the final illusion, the belief that a massive stroke of good luck will permanently solve our problems. We have to understand the neurological mechanism known as the hedonic treadmill.
This is one of the most sobering concepts in psychology.
It really is. The hedonic treadmill, or hedonic adaptation, is the observed tendency of humans to rapidly return to a relatively stable baseline level of happiness, despite major positive or negative events or life changes.
It's driven by dopamine, right?
Yes, it is driven by the way our brains process dopamine. Dopamine is not the chemical of sustained joy. It is the chemical of anticipation and reward prediction error. When something unexpectedly wonderful happens, you get a massive spike of dopamine. But the brain is incredibly efficient. It quickly adjusts its expectations to incorporate the new reality.
The classic, heavily studied example is the lottery winner. A person spends their entire life believing that if they just had $50 million, every ounce of anxiety and sadness would evaporate forever.
And then they hit the jackpot.
They hit the jackpot. The dopamine spike is astronomical. They buy the mansion, the sports cars, they quit the job they hate. For 6 months, they are absolutely euphoric. But then the adaptation kicks in. The mansion just becomes the place they sleep. The sports car just becomes the vehicle they use to sit in traffic. The brain recalibrates. A year later, studies show that their baseline level of happiness drops right back down to whatever it was before they bought the winning ticket. If they were naturally anxious and unfulfilled while broke, they will be anxious and unfulfilled while rich.
The exact same mechanism, remarkably, often applies to severe trauma. Studies of individuals who have suffered paralyzing accidents show a devastating initial drop in happiness. But within a few years, many return to a baseline of happiness astonishingly close to their pre-accident levels.
The human capacity to adapt is just wild.
It is profound. What Dwight and Nami are highlighting with the hedonic treadmill is the extreme danger of relying on external validation.
Because external validation is inherently fleeting. The high always wears off.
If you tie your identity and your joy to the whim of external luck, a promotion, viral fame, a financial windfall, you are stepping onto a treadmill you can never turn off. The moment you achieve the goal, the joy fades, and you are forced to chase an even bigger stroke of luck just to feel the same high. You become a hostage to chance.
I think of it like building a house.
Okay, tell me more.
If your happiness is entirely dependent on the weather being sunny every day, you are going to live in a constant state of terror, frantically watching the radar, cursing every cloud that rolls in. The weather is luck. It is external, chaotic, and uncontrollable. The goal isn't to control the weather.
Right.
The goal is to build a house with such a strong foundation, such thick insulation, and such a secure roof that you can sit comfortably inside with a cup of tea, whether it is 80 degrees and sunny or there is a Category 4 hurricane raging outside. The house is your mindset, your internal purpose, your core values. You don't rely on the sky to validate the strength of your walls.
That architectural analogy perfectly encapsulates the author's ultimate thesis. To build that internally insulated house, the text provides actionable, grounded strategies that rely on intrinsic motivation rather than external reward.
So what does that look like practically?
They focus on defining personal, internal metrics of success that cannot be taken away by a market crash or random accident. This means finding a profound sense of purpose in the process of your work, rather than the financial outcome. It means maintaining rigid work-life boundaries so that a catastrophic failure at the office does not infect your identity as a parent or a friend.
You compartmentalize.
Exactly. It means engaging in actions that release serotonin and oxytocin, the neurochemicals of sustained contentment and connection, such as giving back to your community and cultivating deep, authentic relationships.
But let us make this extremely practical for the listener who is sitting in their car or on the train right now, listening to this and feeling like their house is currently made of straw.
Right. Where do they start?
What is the absolute first step for someone who feels trapped in a relentless, suffocating cycle of bad luck? The person who has had 3 flat tires this month, whose boss is a nightmare and who feels like they are drowning in the chaos. What does the book say they should physically do today to start building the foundation?
The text points directly and unapologetically to the disciplined practice of mindfulness and gratitude. And I know, while those terms have been commodified into generic self-help buzzwords, Dwight and Nami approach them mechanistically.
Mechanistically, okay.
When you are trapped in a cycle of perceived bad luck, your brain is living entirely out of sync with the present. You are either obsessively ruminating on the past, the tires blowing out, the unfair treatment, or projecting massive anxiety into the future, anticipating the next disaster.
You're everywhere but here.
Yes. This state of hyperarousal floods your body with stress hormones, destroying your cognitive bandwidth. Mindfulness is the tactical anchor. By forcing your attention to the immediate physical sensations of the present moment, the temperature of the air, the rhythm of your breathing, you interrupt the neural loop of anxiety. You manually switch off the fight or flight response.
You basically stop the bleeding.
And once the bleeding is stopped, you apply gratitude. This is not about toxic positivity. It is not about pretending the flat tires didn't happen. It is a targeted exercise in neuroplasticity.
How so?
By forcing your brain to identify 3 specific, verifiable positive realities in your present environment, even something as micro as, I have clean drinking water, or
Yeah.
the song on the radio is excellent, you are actively training your reticular activating system.
The RAS from earlier.
Exactly. You are rewiring the filter to start scanning for opportunities and stability rather than exclusively scanning for threats. You are laying the very first bricks of that strong foundation.
We have mapped an immense amount of territory today. We started by taking the mystical concept of luck and breaking it down to its mechanical parts. We realized that while the cosmic lottery of random chance is fiercely real and completely indifferent to us, we are not helpless.
We really aren't.
We can actively cultivate the open-mindedness required for serendipity, and we can spend years building the heavy lightning rods of preparedness to mathematically increase our odds of capturing opportunity when the storm finally breaks. We stared into the vast, quiet expanse of neutral luck, realizing that the mundane moments are the actual canvas of our lives.
We examine the tools we use to navigate the chaos, differentiating the unpredictable roll of the dice from the mathematical probability that helps us manage risk. We expose the intoxicating, dangerous hubris of the lucky streak, learning that humility is the only way to survive the dopamine rush without betting the house.
We journeyed through the psychological history of our superstitions, from Roman mirrors to Norse mythology, realizing that our modern brains are still glitching, inventing false patterns to soothe our anxiety.
And we learned how to use exposure therapy to dismantle those toxic loops. We explored the emotional alchemy of resilience learning to accept the broken laptop or the flat tire without internalizing it as a fatal flaw, and using the growth mindset to weaponize our bad luck into a competitive advantage.
We reframed karma not as a mystical judge waiting to punish us, but as a practical sociological network of cause and effect, a virtuous cycle we must build while recognizing the massive systemic forces that lie beyond our control.
And finally, we confronted the hedonic treadmill, accepting that no amount of external validation or financial windfalls will permanently alter our internal baseline. If you take one overarching principle away from Dwight and Nami's rigorous exploration, let it be this. The universe is going to deal you cards. Some will be magnificent and some will be devastatingly cruel.
Right.
You have absolutely no control over the deal, but you retain absolute, uncompromising sovereignty over how you play the hand. Your preparation, your emotional regulation, and your chosen perspective are the ultimate counterweights to a chaotic world.
Which leaves me with a final, lingering thought for you to carry into the rest of your week. Think back to that opening scenario in the airport, your heart pounding as the flight is canceled. If our internal mindset completely dictates how we process that event,
Yeah.
if we can actively alter our physiological response through mindfulness, reframe the disaster into an opportunity, and build an internal foundation that remains joyful regardless of the external weather, then we have to ask a fundamental question. Is luck actually an invisible external force that happens to us? Or is luck, at its very core, simply an emotion that we generate from within? Keep building your lightning rods. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.